starting this thing. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Fourth Dimension group of Alcoholics Anonymous. My name is Susan Coe, and I'm going to be your alcoholic chairperson. Please help me open this meeting with a moment of silence, followed by the Serenity Prayer. Serenity Prayer.
God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change,
Courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Okay, this is an open meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. We're glad you're here, especially the newcomers. But in keeping with our singleness of purpose and our third tradition, which states the only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking, we ask that all who participate to confine their discussion to problems with alcohol. Is there anybody present who's at their first meeting or in their first 30 days of sobriety? We're not going to embarrass you. You want to say your name, Bill?
JR.
Hey, JR. Welcome. Hey, Brookie.
Jeremiah, an addict and alcoholic.
Hey, Jeremiah. Anybody else? Oh.
I'm Ryan, I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Ryan. Okay. Is there anybody here from out of town?
Bill Alcoholic, Worcester, Massachusetts.
All right. I couldn't tell. Anybody else? Okay, Brian's going to come up and read the preamble.
I'm Brian, I'm an alcoholic. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We're self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denominations, politics, organizations, or institution. Does not wish to engage in any controversy. Neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety.
And Barbara will come up and read our 12 steps.
Okay. Everybody should get an opportunity to get up here once and look at a crowd of recovering alcoholics and see how beautiful sobriety looks. It really does. I had to say that this is my last time up here. Here are the steps we took which are suggested as a program of recovery. 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol. Our lives had become unmanageable. Step 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Now, if you could please silence your cell phones at this time. Also, we ask if you could please refrain from getting up and down during the speakers, but if you must, please do so quietly. If you're going to smoke, we ask you to be away from the buildings. Please be respectful as we are guests of the church. Also, if you have any announcements in between speakers, please see our group secretary. Matt, raise your hand, please. Thank you. And Dawn is going to come up and read our traditions.
My name is Don. I'm an alcoholic. 1. Our common welfare should come first. Personal recovery depends upon AA unity. 2. For our group purpose, there is but one ultimate authority. A loving God as He may express Himself in our group conscience. Our leaders are but trusted servants. They do not govern. 3. The only requirement for AA membership is a desire to stop drinking. 4. Each group should be autonomous except in matters affecting other groups or AA as a whole. 5. Each group has but one primary purpose, to carry its message to the alcoholic who still suffers. 6. An AA group ought never endorse, finance, or lend the AA name to any related facility or outside enterprise, lest problems of money, property, and prestige divert us from our primary purpose. 7. Every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. 8. Alcoholics Anonymous should remain forever non-professional, but our service centers may employ special workers. 9. AA as such ought never be organized, but we may create service boards or committees directly responsible to those they serve. 10. Alcoholics Anonymous has no opinion on outside issues, hence the AA name ought never be drawn into public controversy. 11. Our public relations policy is based on attraction rather than promotion. We need always maintain personal anonymity at the level of press, radio, and films. And 12. Anonymity is the spiritual foundation of all our traditions, ever reminding us to place principles before personalities.
Thank you, Dawn. And now Sean is going to come up and do the chips.
I'm Sean. I'm an alcoholic. This group has a tradition on handing out chips with various lengths of sobriety, so if you have the time, please come up and take a chip. And the first one we offer is a silver chip for 24 hours. All right. Very nice. That's Jeremiah. Next chip we offer is a red chip for 1 month. All right. We got David, Justin, and JR. Next one we offer is a gold chip for 2 months. And that's Michelle, everybody. Next one we offer is a green chip for 3 months. Oh. Then we got a blue chip for 6 months. And we got a purple chip for 9 months. And we got a red chip for 1 year. That's Debbie, everybody. 1 year. Nice job. And then we flip the red chip over for multiples. All right. That's Brendan with 2 years, and that's Steve with 13. And tonight we do things a little bit different, and we're gonna it's celebrant night, so wherever Joe is, I'm gonna introduce Joe to introduce Dan. Thank you.
My name's Joe Hudson. I'm a recovered alcoholic. And I'm trying to think of something to say. You know, I got asked probably about, I feel like the 10-minute speaker, the way we ask them 5 minutes before a meeting starts, you know, you get all nervous and I don't know what to say. Dan, he's been my sponsor for probably 6.5 years now, and you know, there's a couple things. I wanted to turn it into a roast, but I figured since he got second chance rebuttal that I wouldn't do that. But he, you know, I came in at 23, and I was sitting around here, and you know, if you were older than 40, you were old, you know, and this guy, I met him, he was turning 40, and I was like, he's a little old, you know, and then he said he got sober at 22, and something happened where we clicked, and, you know, we were friends before I asked him to sponsor me. I heard his story, and I said, you know, there's something there, you know, and through working the steps, and it's been a great ride, and, you know, he's never led me in the wrong direction, you know, and I don't know too many people in or at AA that said, you know, he's never given me a bad piece of advice. Truthfully, he's probably never given me a piece of advice. You know, he's always given his experience, you know, and his strength, and he gave me back my hope. So without further ado, Dan with 23 years, come on up.
Thank you, Joe. Dan Lenahan, recovered alcoholic. And I don't know what to say, especially after that. I just want to say thanks. You know, I want to say thanks to the guys that I have the privilege of sponsoring, because they've helped me more than I've ever been able to help them. You know, Joe, Wes, Billy, Tom, Kevin, wherever he is out tonight chasing women. You know, God bless them. And I also want to congratulate anybody else that got a chip tonight, or people that got years and people that are celebrating years. That's great. The people that picked up white chips, you know, congratulations. Stay. Don't listen to the keep coming back. Stay. And learn how to live this. And that's what they told me. And, you know, because I was desperate enough and dumb enough to listen and follow directions, I have a life beyond my wildest dreams. And that doesn't mean I don't have problems. It means that, you know, the obsession to drink has been lifted, and that when problems do arise, I know where to turn to. And you know, for a guy like me, that's a lot. You know, to become a member of my family again, to be able to be a friend to a friend, you know, and to be able to be a worker is more than I ever asked for. So I just want to say thanks for that. And then I'm going to move on to our speaker tonight. I've known him for about 20 years, maybe a little over 20 years, and we met at in Galveston, Texas. His parents were foolish enough, kind enough, to let his little brother, who was sober and part of my home group there in Houston, which was also the Fourth Dimension group, and this men's group didn't believe in celebrating birthdays at the group, that we'd go have a camp out somewhere, and the group at this time was maybe 20 people, so we figured 10 would show up at his parents' beach house, and I think 50 guys did. and I remember Chris had, I don't even know if I'd call it a haircut or a hairdo, but part of his head was kind of shaved, and he was goofy. And you know what? But I've seen him change, and I've seen him work, and you know, I've heard his story before, and if a guy like Chris can get sober, you guys picking up white chips can get sober too. And I don't mean that in a bad way to Chris, but I'll let him get up here and tell you the story. So come on up here, Chris.
Don't believe the bullshit about Dan. My name's Chris Pavinetti, and I'm an alcoholic. I haven't found it necessary to take a drink of whiskey since I came to the more on December 3rd, 1987, and that's not my fault. And by the time I finish speaking, you're going to realize that's not my fault. You know, Unfortunately, I'm going to talk to y'all about Alcoholics Anonymous and my experience with Alcoholics Anonymous. If you're looking to hook up or something like that, I guess this probably isn't the place to do it. But I would definitely like to welcome the new people. You know, I didn't always clean up this good. I didn't always have a job. I didn't always have anything. I got sober at 16 years old. And at that point, the drinking age had just changed from 18 to 21. So it was difficult for me to buy alcohol. So part of my story did include other substances. I'm going to do my best to refer to them as dry goods and not go ahead and, you know, get into anything that's going to break any traditions. But, you know, I grew up in a family that was, you know, relatively well-to-do. Dad was master's of business from Kellogg School of Business. Mom had her doctorate in education. Very educated family. You know, we lived a very good life, and I never, ever was hungry unless I forgot my lunch. You know, I had two brothers, one who was older than myself by 2 years and 2 weeks, and one who was younger than myself by 2 years and 2 weeks. Good Catholic family planning. Don't know if the rhythm method worked for the last one, but we'll see. But I do have a relationship with them today, and I do love them both very much. And at one point, I did a lot of my drinking and partying with my brothers. It was very convenient. We would steal each other's stuff, and the other one would steal each other's stuff. You know, I had the stash spot that I hid from my parents, and then the stash spot I hid from my brothers. You know, and that's pretty much how that went. But I remember being probably 6 or 7 years old and sitting in church and sitting there thinking to myself can you hear me back there? Is that okay? Good. I'll try to speak up a little bit. I remember sitting in church about 6 or 7 years old, and I remember sitting there thinking to myself, I hate myself. I just hate myself. And I had no idea why. I had no earthly clue why. I mean, I had the newest BMX bike. I had everything I ever wanted, you know, but I just hated myself. And then sometime between probably 7th grade, maybe it might have been 6th, I don't even remember. I was in the bathroom at school, and this friend of mine holds this dark bottle underneath my nose and goes, "Smell this." And my head started going wonky, and I had no idea what it was. And, you know, I came to find out years later what it was. But, you know, it just was what it was. Didn't do anything for me. But even as young as, you know, 6 or 7, I remember my parents used to have parties. And they would leave the liquor out, you know, from the night before because they were too tanked to clean up. And we'd go out and act like we were adults and sit there and drink, you know, and sit there and hold the cigarettes to our lips. And, you know, it's what we did. You know, I wanted to feel older than myself, always. I always wanted to feel a part of something. You know, and funny thing is, I did everything within my power to be different from everybody else. But I wanted to feel a part of. And, well, basically, somewhere between my 8th grade year, hold on my calls, please. Somewhere between my 8th grade year and my freshman year. No, actually, I'll just back up a little bit. During my 8th grade year, we had been studying all the 6 weeks or whatever it was, the time period was, for this academic decathlon. And I worked my tail off for this. And I went over to spend the night at a team member's house, and another team member came over, and they brought this duffel bag with them, and they said, "We're going to his girlfriend's house." I'm like, okay. And we go to this convenience store. I think it was a U-Totem. which is like 7-Eleven, same difference. But, and we got these super hog cups, which are like huge old 42-ounce cups, right? And they went in the bushes, and they dumped out about this much of the soda and pulled the bag out and got a bottle of wild turkey out of there and poured the rest of wild turkey in there. And I figured, well, hell, if you're going to do this, let's do it right. So I poured out all but about this much soda and poured the rest wild turkey in there. Well, at this time, I was in 8th grade, and I was maybe 100 pounds soaking wet. And so I ingested 32 ounces of alcohol, in pretty much in one sitting, walking from the 7-Eleven to this girl's house. And, all of a sudden something happened. All of a sudden, the liquor went in my mouth and it was warm. And then it went down my throat and it was warm. And it got in my stomach and exploded. And rays of light started shooting out of my eyes, and everybody I saw was beautiful. And rays of light started shooting out of my ears, and everything I heard sounded like the angels sing. And rays of light shot out of my mouth, and everything I said I thought was hilarious. I got so much courage that night that I asked every single girl I saw if they'd sleep with me. That included my friend's mother. That didn't go over real well. Well, she, being a good Irish Catholic, realized that I was drunk. And, gave me Amitrol to induce vomiting. And something happened that night. I came to in the middle of the night, and my friend tells me I saw him drinking out of a bottle. And I said, oh, God, keep that shit away from me. I reacted normally. I reacted like a normal person. Then the next morning I got up and I went to this academic decathlon and I answered questions that no one else from any other school was getting. And I performed well. Now granted, I was as green as my doggone blazer, and everybody just said I was sick or whatever, because they didn't want to say I was hungover. I performed well and there weren't any consequences. Because, the good Catholic Irish guilt and shame, they didn't want to tell my parents that I was tanked. So, because it would have made their family look bad, and, et cetera, et cetera. But, so, after we finished the decathlon, man, I wanted to get drunk again as soon as I could. Because that feeling was great. Suddenly, everything in the world was right. Suddenly, my problems didn't matter a hill of beans. Suddenly, I didn't feel less than you anymore. Suddenly, I wasn't afraid. And so, being all of, 13 years old, because I started school early, I did go ahead and, drink as often as possible. And sometime between the summer, between my 8th grade year and my freshman year, my older brother, who was a year ahead of me in school, bet me $100 that I couldn't stay sober all summer. Now, $100 to me is a good chunk of change today. That'd pay my cell phone bill and, have some money left over to get something to eat. But to an 8th grader, man, that's all the money in the damn world. I could have bought a new BMX bike and the new Loverboy album. I mean, what the hell else would I want? I mean, dude, I'd have been it. But, if I'd been around Dan, I would have been buying Culture Club. But, it is what it is. Thank God I didn't know him at the time. So anyway, 2 weeks into the bed, hanging out with my brother and his friends down in Galveston at the bonfires, watching them drink, I realized that I couldn't have fun if I wasn't drinking. My drinking had changed. It had gone from adding to my good time to becoming my good time. And I found a way to weasel out of the bet. Drinking was more important to me at that point, at 13 years old, than money was. And so my drinking continued to progress, mixed with dry goods, because as I said, you can't exactly buy alcohol at 13, 14 years old. But we would pay people at the gas station to go in and buy us alcohol. And Oddly enough, no one ever took off with our money, but, I don't know why not. And we would wahoo beer from stores, go in and, knock over something while my buddy was slipping out with a couple of 12-packs. And I had to make amends for that stuff. Yeah. But in any event, so what happened was, I went off to high school. And I went off to a private Jesuit high school. And I didn't fit in. I didn't feel right. It's the same people I went to elementary school with, same people I went to junior high with, a couple extra people. But my older brother was so obnoxious that the seniors used to dump him in a trash can head first every single day. And so by the time he was a sophomore and I was a freshman, he thought it'd be great to have his football playing buddy friends to dump me in a trash can head first. And, I just didn't like that a whole lot. And I didn't fit in and I didn't feel right. So I tried to transfer to the public school. And I went to the public school. And the public school I transferred to made David Letterman's top 10 snobbiest high schools in the country 2 years while I was there. And I didn't fit in real well. At least I thought I didn't fit in. The funny thing about it is looking back, a girl who ended up being homecoming queen asked me out freshman year. And I remember sitting there, and my life was a mess. At 14 years old, my life was already a mess. Because I couldn't make friends unless you partied like I did. And I looked for the people who partied like I did. Because those are the people I felt comfortable around. And I even looked for people who were worse than I was. So I could feel comfortable, even more comfortable. I could look down on them. They say the alcoholic's the only one face down in the gutter who can look down on the world, And that was definitely me. By this time, I was drinking seniors under the table. By this time, my life centered around drinking and other substances. And I didn't fit in. I knew something was wrong, and I blamed it on the school. So I transferred back to the private school. And eventually the Jesuits even had a problem with my drinking, which is pretty friggin' amazing. And so I got asked to leave after halfway through my sophomore year in high school. And at this point, I started seeing a group therapist and an individual therapist. So I was going to therapy at 15 years old, twice a week. And group therapy was great. Because group therapy, you could deflect and it had nothing to do with you, and it's, they're worse than me, and so on and so forth, and you could just focus on somebody else's problems. It's like, well, if I'd done what Dan did, criminy, And so group therapy was great, but this damn individual therapist, he started asking me hard questions. Now, he knew I drank. My parents knew I drank. Matter of fact, for my 16th birthday, my parents bought us a bunch of cases of beer and said, have fun. And we were at the beach house, and it wasn't a big deal. We couldn't drive anywhere, so, it was just how it was. But I do remember the first time I drove without my parents, and I was driving drunk at 15 years old with a learner's permit. First time I drove without my parents, My brother brought me along so I could go to the party with him, and he could get tanked, and I'd drive home. Well, he was getting tanked with his friends, and I was off with mine getting tanked too. And so just kind of how it went. And at this point, drinking had ceased being my good time, and it became my time. It's what I did just to get up in the morning. It's what I did to go to school. It's what I did to get through lunch. It's what I did when I got home from school. And I couldn't figure out why my life was in shambles. I mean, doesn't everybody use a bunch of dry goods and sit there and eat a pint of sorbet and watch G.I. Joe and Transformer cartoons and not know why they're failing school? and not know why they were a veteran sophomore. I failed my sophomore year not once, but twice. You know, I wasn't even a red shirt. I was a veteran. You know, and I mean, it was unbelievable. And basically, eventually, you know, this individual therapist started asking me hard questions. He started asking me stuff like, well, Chris, do you, you know, use dry goods? And, well, I thought about it, and everybody I knew did. I mean, he knew I drank, so my parents knew I drank, so that wasn't an issue. But, you know, he asked me about the other substances, and I was like, well, yeah, I tried it once. You know, and he's like, okay, that's interesting. And then 2 weeks later, he asked me again if I've tried it again. Now, of course, 2 weeks, I've used dry goods and drank at least 14 to 21 times since then. So I knew that if I told him no, he'd know I was lying. And then they'd put me in treatment. And I didn't want that. God, I didn't want that. And so I went in and said, yeah, I tried it one more time. And, you know, interesting taking notes, you know. And next thing I know, my parents are searching my room. And they were finding entire drawers full of Visine, you know? Because I would swear to myself by this time I wasn't going to use any dried goods. I'm 16 years old, and I'm swearing to myself I'm not going to do this stuff. But I would end up doing it anyway. And so I'd have to steal some Visine or buy some Visine and, you know, bring it home. And then at 16 years old, I did something that I thought was completely and totally normal. I swore off women because they got in the way of my drinking. Now, if y'all know 16-year-old boys, they're the horniest individuals you'll probably ever meet. But at this point in my life, drinking was more important to me than women. And that I thought was normal. You know, the big book talks about, it talks about it in the doctor's opinion, and my brain just went blank. But basically it says that to them their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. I thought if you didn't drink like I did, you weren't doing it right. And if you didn't drink at all, I couldn't trust you. You know, and that was pretty convincing. It was a good argument. You know, of course, I always use the same one that I'm sure no one else in this room's ever used before. You know, I could quit if I wanted to. I just don't want to. You know, and I was convinced. You know, I had things like that were propping me up. Well, you know, eventually my parents did find some dried goods in my room. And my parents pulled me aside and they're like, Chris, we need to talk to you. And then they say, we've decided it'd be in your best interest. And right then my brain clicked. There was this song by a skate rock band out of California named The Suicidal Tendencies. And they did a song called Institutionalized. And it's like, we've decided it'd be in your best interest. I'm like, wait a minute, what are you talking about? I quoted that song back to my parents by a punk rock band named The Suicidal Tendencies. My parents are telling me they're putting me in a treatment center, and I'm so distant from my friggin' life that I'm quoting punk rock song lines back to my parents. And I thought that was cool. You know? Wow. It's unbelievable. Well, in any event, I ended up in treatment. And I couldn't figure this out. You know, it was an old converted apartment complex that should have been condemned instead of converted. And, you know, it wasn't clean and the mattresses smelled like urine. And, you know, but there were a bunch of people there who were kind of cool. You know, and I'm looking around, I'm like, well, I'm really glad these people have a solution for their problem. Thank God I'm different. You know, and after being there between November 11th, 1987, the night of December 2nd, 1987, I decided that if you had the problems I had, you'd deserve to drink too. So I hopped a 14-foot wall and ran through neighborhoods I wouldn't be caught dead in by myself, much less in the middle of the night alone. And, I call this buddy of mine and I'm like, hey man, I just got out. Can you come get me? So now let's think about the good friends I have. Hey dude, I'm an escapee from a mental asylum. Can you come pick me up? And he's like, sure dude. So he picks me up and drops me off someplace, or he goes in with me to this one guy's apartment I've never met before. And there's this other guy there that I can't stand. And they gave me something to smoke so I wouldn't want to do any of their cocaine. And that was fine with me. And so I'm sitting there and I'm using dry goods with this kitten who's on 2.5 hits of acid because the guy left his acid out and the cat ate it. And the cat's sitting there swatting at stuff that's not even there. And I'm blowing smoke in the cat's face thinking, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. But something weird happened. It wasn't enough. No matter how much I smoked, I couldn't get high enough. And so when they finished coming out of the bathroom, which I have no idea why they went to the bathroom, I didn't want what they had, and they were just, there was no one else there, but they still went in the bathroom to do it. And they came out, and I was like, let's go get some beer, because beer was my standby. Alcohol was what worked for me. And so we went to the liquor store and bought, a convenience store, and bought beer and eggs. And we drank the beer and drove by the treatment center, and I threw the eggs at the treatment center because Lord knows I didn't have any resentments. Lord knows I didn't have an ego where I needed to show off. I wasn't trying to hit this one pretty girl's window on purpose. Lord knows I didn't belong there, and I just wanted to laugh at those suckers because look at them, they're sober and I'm tanked. How great is this? Well, the next morning I came to. And I wasn't sleeping on a bed. I wasn't on my queen-size bed with a brass headboard at home. I wasn't even on the urine-soaked mattress at the treatment center. I wasn't even on a bed. I was sleeping on like 4 or 6 plastic milk crates with just the egg cartons that go between the mattress and the box spring. And I look around, and there's stains on the carpet. And these stains are unidentifiable. I mean, at an AA meeting, AA club, there's tons of stains, and it's usually coffee and an ashtray, or maybe a newcomer had an accident or something. But these stains were unidentifiable. And then I look up at the wall, and there's this sheet hanging on the wall with this amorphous drawing, and this really bad lettering that says Stonehenge. And the guy's like, dude, that's my band. I'm like, wow. This is not what I want for my life. This is not where I want to be for the rest of my life. And so I started thinking about my options. I was like, I'll go back home. No, that won't work. They'll just put me back in treatment. I know I'll somehow go steal a car and get to my parents' beach house and stay there. No, the Jamaica Beach cops come get me. I know what I can do. I can stay with a friend. And I was like, wait a minute. None of my friends' parents like me. Well, I know I'll get a job and maybe I can earn enough money to live in a shithole like this. Yeah, this is not what I want. And so all of a sudden a light bulb clicked. My parents had always said, Chris, if you tell the truth, you'll get in less trouble. And so I decided to go back to treatment. And so I walked back to the treatment center and I had my first strip search that day. And this one wasn't a big deal because it was somebody I knew. And he's like, you got any dope on you? It's like, no. He's like, well, take off your britches, take off your shirt, turn around. Okay, that's fine. Then I sat there and played chess with one of the techs for a couple hours. And I was beating him, And he's like, oh, no one ever beats me. He was probably trying to make me feel better, but I thought I was Billy Badass, And so all of a sudden this ambulance shows up. And these guys come out with a gurney, and they're wearing white coats and white pants. And they're like, Chris, we're taking you to this hospital, to the psychiatric ward. I'm like, okay. They're like, you can either do this the easy way or the hard way. The hard way is we're going to give you Thorazine, and you're going to go ahead and, had I known then what I knew now about Thorazine, I might have taken that option. However, I am truly grateful I didn't. God was looking out for me because what happened was I rode all the way in this ambulance. And then we got to the hospital and we walked inside. And these two guys were flanking me and it smelled like a hospital. We go down this long hallway and there's this big metal door. And they hit the button. They're like, psh, we have a new admit. And you hear them buzz and the clicks and the whirs and this locks open and the door opens and it's like whoosh. And then we walk in and I'm looking around and everybody's in scrubs doing the Thorazine shuffle, and all of a sudden I hear the door lock behind me. I hear the door just slam shut, excuse me. And the locks and the whirs happen again. And I need to haul ass if we're going to get done by 8. I'm sorry. But basically what happened was after my second strip search that day, I realized that my drinking wasn't normal. It had taken me someplace I didn't want to be for the first time ever. You know? I had friends who talked about treatment centers before, and man, they just talked about learning about new drugs and going out and partying, and things were great. But they didn't. They talked about tennis courts and swimming pools. They didn't talk about strip searches. And so I realized I didn't want what these people had. I wanted to do something about my drinking. So I decided just to go to Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. And that's all I did for about a year and a half, was go to AA meetings. And I chased a lot of skirts, and I played a lot of cards, and I drank way too much coffee, and I smoked 5 cigarettes at the same time. And funny thing is, nothing changed. And then one day I was sitting in a meeting, and I look up on the wall, and I realized there were 12 steps on the wall. And they weren't there to actually cover a hole in the wall. They were actually there for practice. And someone talked about a spiritual awakening in this meeting, and they talked about a spirit. I was like, that sounds friggin' cool. I want that. I think I'm going to sit in these meetings till I get it. And then all of a sudden I looked up the wall again, and I saw the 12th step, and it says, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. And I had a V8 moment. I could have had a V8. All I got to do is work these 12 steps, and this badass stuff's going to happen. I'm going to have an entire psychic change. I am going to have a personality rearrangement sufficient to bring about recovery from alcoholism. This personality rearrangement thing, that scared me a little bit. Because I thought my personality was okay. I thought I was a pretty stand-up guy. I only stole from stores. I wouldn't steal from people, you know. And they had insurance, you know. But, you know, and I only got drunk on days that ended in Y. You know, and so I thought, you know, there's nothing really wrong with my personality. But then I eventually got a sponsor. And I started going to this old timers meeting. And they would, you know, they called me asshole. Just because they did. It was either asshole or boy. And I was, you know, 17 years old and I had hair down the middle of my back and looked a lot like Yahoo Serious because it stuck out all over the place. And, you know, these were a bunch of sweet old men that smoked cigarettes, drank coffee, talked about God and the F word in the same sentence. And they'd tell me when I'd try to share, sit down, shut up, boy, you don't know shit. And then I'd try to share again. They're like, boy, get off the cross, we need the wood. And, you know, and then I'd bitch about my problems to them. And they'd say, boy, why don't you go on down to the men's center? The men's center is a Skid Row drying out clinic in downtown Houston on Main Street. Why don't you go on down to the men's center and talk to a drunk who's puking up his guts up in a bucket? Tell him how miserable your life is because your Jaguar won't start. And tell him how miserable your life is because your girlfriend isn't giving enough with her amenities. And tell him how miserable your life is because your mom grounded you. And I had to do that a whole lot. And that's when I started to learn about service, because I tell you this, no matter how miserable I felt every single time when I walked in there, by the time I left, I realized my problems weren't worth a hill of beans in this world. And that I was grateful for what I had. And gratitude's huge, and so I'm going to go ahead and try to tie in gratitude to this because I'm sure we're running close on time. But what I do is, somebody once told me, very early on, they told me, Chris, I've never seen a grateful alcoholic go out and get drunk. And so I decided I wanted to get grateful. So my sponsor had me writing gratitude lists periodically whenever I bitch and moan, and so I started writing gratitude lists every single day. And currently, I sat down before the meeting and wrote out a list, and I tried to relate it to each of the steps. And so I'm going to go ahead and talk about these. Today I'm grateful that God made me an alcoholic. The people who are new in the meeting and the people who, much like myself, have been around for a minute, you've seen the people who talk about, I'm a grateful alcoholic, and they look like they're constipated. I didn't want a damn thing those people had. But today, I can honestly say that I'm grateful that I'm an alcoholic. Because without being an alcoholic, I wouldn't have got to live the miserable, horrible, awful, useless existence of the prodigal son that I lived. And be where I am today, where I have to drive for 2 hours to come to a meeting. And I'm willing to drive for 2 hours to come to a meeting so I can see some schlum like Dan pick up his chip. And then I'm also grateful today that God gave me a solution so that I can serve Him better. The second step in the big book, they talk about it in Bill's story a little bit. And he talks about it was only a matter of being willing to believe in a power greater than myself. That was all that was required of me to make a beginning. I wouldn't believe in God when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. I just wouldn't. And, you folks told me that God's what made it better for you. And I heard you folks' stories. And y'all were a whole bunch worse than I was. And by the time I was looking at the second step, I was so friggin' miserable that I didn't want to exist like that anymore. And so I went ahead and gave it a try. And the funny thing is, the first prayer I ever said, I remember saying in treatment, God, please make me constitutionally incapable of being honest with myself. Please, God, make me constitutionally incapable of being honest with myself, because it doesn't work for those people. I was like, I hope that's the case. But eventually, after being dry for 6 months, I realized I had failed my sophomore year in high school, not a first time, but a second time. And I realized that, I can't do anything right except drink, so I may as well drink. And I'm sitting in the computer room, in the laundry room, whatever, and there's a fridge behind me that has beer in it, and I'm like, I can just drink. I know how to do that right. And suddenly this light bulb went off in my head. And I remembered that I couldn't drink successfully anymore. You people in Alcoholics Anonymous had finally ruined my drinking. I hated y'all. But I knew I couldn't drink successfully because whenever I drank, the phenomenal craving started. And it became more important than anything else. I would lie, cheat, and steal just to get whatever I could. I would do whatever I had to do just to get drunk. Because I didn't like the way I felt when I wasn't drunk. And so I realized that I had a problem there. I was like, well, hell, I can't do anything right. I may as well kill myself. And all of a sudden, this light bulb went off in my head that said, the people in Alcoholics Anonymous said to call them when you want to drink or kill yourself. And it was 8 o'clock on a Friday night, and this is before anybody had cell phones, and this is before people had answering machines even. And, so I started dialing everybody's number, but they were probably at the meeting much like this one, and they were having a good time and laughing. And I couldn't get a hold of anybody. So after dialing the phone for what seemed like 2 years, I finally went ahead and said, God, I don't believe in you. But if you're there, and if you give a shit, and if I haven't hurt you so bad that you won't help, please help me not to drink for the next 5 minutes until I get a hold of somebody on the phone. Right there, I did the first, the second, the third step. I realized that I couldn't drink successfully. My drinker was busted. It's just that plain and simple. My drinker's busted. And I realized that I didn't like myself. See, I hadn't lost the car, the job, the girlfriend, the wife, all that stuff. I didn't have that stuff. But I realized that people who manage their lives well probably like themselves. And I couldn't stand myself. So I realized that, that first step was okay. I was able to be honest with myself for the first time that my drinker was busted. And so then the second step came along, and I got some hope that maybe, just maybe, the people in Alcoholics Anonymous could help me. And then I made a decision to go ahead and take the third step and make that phone call. Well, but what happened that night at 8 o'clock on a Friday night before cell phones and before answering machines is I couldn't get a hold of anybody. And so I was forced to look at other options. You know, I was going to kill myself after I couldn't get a hold of anybody. And then Sister Constant Joy from Our Lady of Perpetual Sorrow's voice came in my head. If you kill yourself, you're going to go to hell. Now, I didn't believe in God. But I was convinced, as at that point I liked to gamble a lot, I was convinced that if there is a hell, it's not going to be fun. Now, what I'm going through right now is probably a whole lot better than hell. So I wanted to hedge my bets. Maybe, just maybe, if there is a hell, I better not kill myself. So instead, I came to believe that maybe, just maybe, God could help me. And maybe, just maybe, He would. And then I went ahead and made a decision to say a prayer. You know, they're telling me I have 2 minutes left. You know, unfortunately, I could probably go on for another hour and a half. But the fact of the matter is that I'll just go through this gratitude list real quick and relate it to the steps. Step 1, God made me an alcoholic. Step 2, God gave me a solution so that I could serve Him better. Oh, I thought it was to serve, I don't know. Anyway, step 3, God is the most important thing in my life. God, I thought that was hokey. These people would talk about God being the most important thing in their lives. I was like, what a bunch of hoo-ha horse hockey. I don't want that. But today I can look each and every one of you in the eyes. And I can say God is the most important thing in my life. Because without God, I wouldn't be here today. And then step 4, God gives me the strength and inspiration to serve Him better. It took courage for me to go ahead and write that 4th step because I thought I was the baddest mofo this side of the Pecos River. But turns out I was just, lint. That's all I was. And I'm not going to talk about where that lint was, but I was just lint. And, and the dryer sheet, that's it. Step 5, God works in and through me to lead others to His service. You know, every time I get to hear a 5th step and every time I get to give a 5th step, there's a certain amount of trust that goes on between myself and another alcoholic. And during my first 5th step, I was all afraid that I had no idea, because my first sponsor, who took me through the steps twice, had never worked them himself. But it was enough for me to stay sober. But so I had no idea what I was going to do. It said admitted to God, to ourselves, and to the human being the exact nature of our wrongs. So I thought I was going to have to go ahead and go to church and get on my knees in front of the altar and read my 5th step to God. I had no idea. But in the middle of my 5th step, sitting outside, a monarch butterfly came and lit on my shoulder and sat there for what felt like the rest of the day, but it was probably 30 seconds. But right then and there, I knew that God was there. And that was an amazing thing. Step 6, God gave me the willingness to serve Him better. You know, entirely ready to get rid of these defects of character, have God remove all these defects of character is a whole lot of ready. I needed some willingness to do that. Step 7, interesting, I don't have to, there it is. God loves me, and I love you, O Lord, and living in your service. You know, step 6, God made me ready to get to better things. Step 7, God helped me to get to better things when I asked Him humbly. And it wasn't, hey, take them if you can, big guy. It was more like, Dad, please. This stuff's killing me. I've destroyed friendships. I can barely not drink living this way. Please. Step 8, God puts people in my life to lead me to His service. You know, I had to become entirely ready. You know, I had to become willing to make amends to everyone. I made a list and I became ready to make amends to these people. And that took some brotherly love. And God put people in my life to lead me to that because these people were successful and they were happy. And they said they did this. And so I went ahead and did it too. And step 9, God has given me this life to dedicate to His service. You know, until I'd done my 9th step, I had no idea who the hell I was. I didn't have a life yet. But through making my amends, through doing my fifth step, I became a member of Alcoholics. I felt like I was a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. Through doing my ninth step, I felt like I was a member of society at large. And I wasn't ashamed to walk down the street to see anyone anymore. And I wasn't terrified that you would know what a piece of crap I thought I was. You know, and God gave me that opportunity.